thank you, Edward, for coming to Inspiring Courage podcast.
It is a complete pleasure always to speak to you, but especially on this particular topic.
Brilliant. So I have to tell the audience how I know you. I know you from my mastermind group, and you were my best birthday present when I turned 47. And also, I just wanted to touch up on your story of success.
So it will be at the end of June this year, it will be 9 years. So 2011, I was racing a yacht, a friend's yacht, and it was quite windy. It was full 30 plus knots of wind. And I got hit on the head at about 30 plus miles an hour with a stainless steel ring, sort of the thickness of my middle finger. So quite weighty with a sail attached to it. And the neurologist afterwards said that I'd continued because it was part of my competitive spirit, and we continued racing and finished the race, but I was not in a particularly good state. Misdiagnosed, skipped forward a little bit. I was then under a neurologist eventually, and it was during the process of recovery that I was told that after about, it must have been between 14 and 18 months after the accident, I was told, this is it, you've reached a plateau, you're not going to get any better. You know, prior to that, I'd worked internationally. Clients were blue chip tech companies, foreign governments. And I was just told that was it. You're not going to exist in that realm anymore. You're just going to have to make, I'm going through a period of bereavement for the loss of all those functions, that capability. And deep inside of me, something just said, hell no. I couldn't put a finger on it, but I was angry initially. And it wasn't until the realization of that setting in that I recalled that, well, hang on a minute, that doesn't add up. I had to learn to read again. I could recognize words, but put them in a sentence, they didn't mean anything. I couldn't retain the information. It was very labored to actually try and read. But it was the realization that I was able to read after many months of painful mental exhaustion of trying to read again. But it was the fact that it was the realization I was able to recall and retain that information. And one of the symptoms was the fact that I'd lost all of my learned knowledge. I'd lost access to my memories, my learned knowledge, which as a consultant is, working in the knowledge economy, is everything. If you can't remember anything, then so that I would say I had this massive reset button hit. Now I'm so grateful for that conversation of telling me you've reached a plateau, this is it, because that was the impetus that deep inside me something went, no, this can't be right, this isn't right. And my initial reference point was the realization that, hang on a minute, I am able to learn new things. I've learned to read again. I can recall the information. So new memories there. And I just had total belief in the human brain that we use such a small portion of it, and it's so little understood, that I had, the first time that I can recall, because obviously I lost some memory, total and utter faith with my entire being that I would be 110% better than I was before my head injury. Rather irrational, probably, given my state, because I couldn't, draw anything to say, well, how am I going to get there? And I think the point was, how am I going to do it? I had no clue whatsoever, but I only had my intuition guiding me and what felt right. And part of it was, well, if they're wrong about my memory, I am not going to get any better, but I've actually learned new things and I'm recording it. So perhaps everything else they've told me is wrong. So I just took that as the next reference. Everything the neurologist had told me not to do. Don't overstress your brain. Don't do this. Don't do that. I did the complete opposite. So that was my starter for 10, as it were. And then as I progressed through the recovery, I didn't lose my memory. I lost the connections to it. Those neuro connections were damaged, broken. And it wasn't until 4 years ago now that when I was asked to co-author a book, and my story was in the book, that I did some research, and then I discovered that there's actually a science called neuroplasticity that is now sort of mainstream in its thought process is that, you know, that ability for the brain to reconnect and regrow neural paths.
What did you trust? So when you
What did I
couldn't,
trust? Myself, my trust. I trusted myself, my intuition, because I didn't have anything else to guide me. I didn't have any social references that of anyone else that had had a brain injury that had come back.
was there a particular quote or a famous story you'd read, a fable, anything that kept you going? Did you have anything pinned on your wall?
I had to learn to know who I was again. So I went through a process of personal development, core values exercise, to understand who I was, what made me tick, what my purpose was. But during that process, I discovered a book by Napoleon Hill, which is, you know, probably the godfather of personal development, Think and Grow Rich. And there was one quote in there that just resonated beautifully, and it was, you know, the quote, you know, what the mind of man can conceive, it can achieve. And that just summed up for me my total belief in the human brain to achieve and to create something tangible at the end of it from an intangible. The belief in the human brain was mine, and that's what effectively just grounded me. And I used meditation, I experimented all sorts of things, went through cycles of clinical depression and came back out the other side. So yeah, so it's not, you know, a linear curve of progress. It was very much, you know, lots of downs in amongst the highs.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that story, because as you say, that, you know, getting from point A where you were given your diagnosis to point B where you are and you regained a full memory and the capacity to read again and to understand and to recognize people around you and to be the great person, you know, in your professional life that you were. There are many ups and downs, and thank you for highlighting those, because it's never linear. The process of change or transformation is never linear. We have lots of ups and downs. And I love the quote, because that just shows that when you are in control of your life, when you decide to be in control of your life, you control your reality, and nobody else can do that but you. So you, as the person in charge, have to take complete ownership of the problem that you're facing and discover ways of sorting it. And that's what I love. One last nugget of wisdom, if you could recommend people who are at a stage where they've been given some bad news by a professional, what would you say to them? How would you encourage them to just think differently and try different things?
I always, you know, choose and think very carefully about the questions that you ask, especially, you know, if you have all your faculties and you're able to rationalize things, then obviously that becomes a lot easier. If you're in a state of mind that I was in, where I couldn't even hold a thought in my head, it's very difficult to use that. So I relied very much on my intuition. And I would encourage everyone to, you know, if you get that little gut feeling, you know, does it feel right? Doesn't feel right? Always go with your gut 100% of the time. That's your inner self, your inner subconscious still running the programs in the background saying, this doesn't feel right, or this isn't going to serve you well. The biggest thing, I think, if someone's given sort of especially if it's a life and death, you know, diagnosis of, I'm sorry, you've only got 3 months to live. Try if that is your loved one, that it's kind of, you know, that news is good. Try not to have the professional tell them, because there are so many instances where people die exactly within days or whatever of whatever diagnosis they've been given, because that's a program that's been put into their brain. And your brain is far greater. It's such a beautiful organ, that vastly untapped, and, you know, it will help you to overcome so many different obstacles if you give it the chance to. And it's about having mindset, having a growth mindset, having a positive mindset, and positive thoughts. Be very careful about those internal dialogues that go on, especially if they're influenced by other professionals or other sources of information like that.
Thank you so much. I could go on talking to you all day, literally, but these are short video series, so we'll revisit another topic with you at another time, if you don't mind.
Lovely.
Well, it's been great having you.
Thank you so much.